G'day everybody, welcome back. In this is a bonus video. This was when Grant and myself were playing around with the Topaz software, and we decided to go through some of my own old photos. Grant picked out one of some of the first ones I ever took with my camera. My new camera was the D700 at the time. So I have a bit of a process in Lightroom and put it through Topaz. I'm currently working on episode 20, so hopefully I'll have that up and ready to go next week, so next Tuesday. There's also another thing I'd like to let you know, and details will be coming soon. I'll probably do a Zoom workshop, which I'll open up to our local camera clubs as well as Photo Australia. So I'm going to go through Lightroom. It's software that I use a fair bit. And the good thing is that you'll be able to interact and ask questions as we go along. So if you have any photos you'd like me to work on, I'll see if I can get Grant here as well at the studio. We'll go through those photos and have a crack, and I'll let you know of dates and times, and I hope to see you there. So with that, we'll go straight to the bonus video. Bye-bye.
Okay, hi folks, welcome back to another edition of Photo Australia. We had an email from a viewer who thanked us for taking care of the next few months of his life and going back over all his old photos and reprocessing them. This was a bit of a spin-off from the interview we did with James Camosi from Canada. That alerted us to this, and it's actually been quite popular. So,
and we've been currently looking at one of your photos, looking at one of your older photos.
Yep.
So what we're doing now is we're having a look at some of my photos, and this one stuck out in Grant's mind. I'm just going to put it back to, that's my original processing. This was one of my first trips I'd ever done when I started photographing. It was back in 2011. I've been telling everybody 2012 was when I started photography, so I've been lying. But it was the end of 2011. This is the first trip I did, which was to Tasmania.
You just imagine, Brad, if back then was sitting around the campfire that evening, if someone had said, and you know what, in 2020, you're all going to be doing this, you would have probably thrown him in the lake. But,
anyway. I probably would have thrown myself in the lake back then.
But look, what a great photo. I love this scene. I think it's got enormous potential, and you've done well with that original processing you did, very well. But I wonder how you would do it differently now. So let's have a crack at it.
Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to reset the photo, which is a great, and I'm not going to keep jumping on Adobe's thing, but it is a good tool to use because you can reset back to your original photo very easily. And I'm sure a lot of the other processing, and we're going to dive deeper into a lot of other software, would probably do the same these days. But the good thing is back in 2011, I can reset that back to the original raw photo that came out of the camera. And that's how I took it. So as I think you can agree, the sky is a bit on the highlighty side.
So
and
can you recall back then, Brad, were you using CPLs or at that stage? I mean, this is your very early...
No. This is going back to... I had just finished a course in Adelaide on using your camera manual exposure, manual everything. And I was just starting to comprehend the idea of using aperture priority. So this is very experimental days. So I was doing a lot of hit and missing with my photography. This one I slightly missed as I just brought up the clipping of highlights. And if I was photographing this now, I'd be very careful not to blow out my highlights in the sky. But back then, I just whacked it on a tripod. I looks like I shot at f11, so I'd started to getting a bit of an idea of what f-stop I needed for landscapes and whatever else. But very fresh and very new into photography. So, but I had just completed. The first thing I did was do a course, which helped me a lot to, where to begin.
Yep. And looking at this photo, the few things immediately popped to mind that if you were a shooting this again today, as you keep hearing me say, expose on the brights. So you'd expose a little more on the sky. You wouldn't really worry about the darks because we can retrieve that here. And I think if you could have, you would have taken a step forward and to the left if it wasn't going to get you terribly wet.
So much more. I actually did get wet on this trip. That was freezing cold water.
Yep.
I did take a shot out in that freezing water, which was actually a good shot.
Yep.
But the composition-wise, I'd do this completely differently. Completely differently. I've basically walked around a little bit, sat the tripod down at normal eye level. So you could keep picking on this for days. I got people cut off on the right-hand side.
Yep.
It's atrocious. But in any case, so this is the shot I took back in 2011. Let's see what we can do, I suppose. So did you want me to start with the Lightroom, or do you want me to
you're right.
move to a different software? We can use Lightroom.
Lightroom's fine.
Okay, so the first thing I notice is that there's a lot of dark shadow. There's detail in my shadows there, but we can't see it. So I would be wanting to lift and see the detail in some of those shadows.
Can I just give viewers another option here with that? If you can just reset the shadows, Brad.
Yep.
Back to original.
Yep.
Just click on auto. Now, I know this is, the purist is going to go, what are you doing that for? But it's sometimes a very useful place to start, to have a look at what Lightroom, the program, Lightroom's now analysed the image and it's applied what it thinks are the correct settings. And sometimes it gets it pretty right and other times it gets it horribly wrong. This is one of the times it got it pretty right, actually.
It has.
It's not bad.
And I think if you're learning and starting out with Lightroom, it's the same with, you can use presets as well. And they can also help you decide of how to process.
Yep.
I've sort of, it's weird, I've developed my routine of what I hit.
Yep.
And sometimes when I hit these auto settings, it throws me out a little bit because I have a certain way of how I process.
A workflow.
Workflow.
Yep.
But in saying that, Grant, with this photo, it has actually hit pretty close onto it. And
just to point to the viewers and anyone new to photography and new to the use of this sort of program, just have a look at that. Now, I'm going to suggest to Brad now he hits the reset button again and goes back to doing what he would normally do.
Oh, I'm going to leave it there because it's actually, there's a couple of sliders there that I don't touch on unless it's right at the end, and that's the vibrance and saturation.
Yep.
It has given it some vibrance and given it some saturation. It's hit a lot of sliders I do anyway. One is the contrast. I'm not going to complain with it's added a little bit of exposure. I'm not going to complain because the exposure was a bit out. But in saying that, it was a bit bright at the sky and whatnot. But I'll allow that. That's fine. It's added a bit of contrast, which is what I normally do. It's brought back the highlights a lot, which I can totally understand because of that bright sky. Shadows, it's lifted, which is what we were just looking at. It's added some whites. So what it's done is it's brought the histogram to the right and stretched the photo out, which is one thing I remark on a lot for processing with Lightroom, and that would be with any software, is to make sure your whites go out to the whites. So that's to the highlights here. And one that I find that a lot of people miss out on is actually putting black back into the photo. Lightroom has done that. Like I said, surprisingly enough, it's hit pretty close to how I do my rough processing. Apart from the vibrance and saturation, I fiddle with that very last because that I only tweak a little bit, because by the time you've punched everything else in, you're getting pretty close.
Does Lightroom have an HSL function? With
Yes,
the
it
colours?
does. Yes, it does. So if we expand this down here,
I reckon we could get a little bit more out of that sky. Yeah.
so you can adjust the hue of it, which is actually targeting the colours themselves and changing the colours themselves. You've got your saturation, which is one that I have played with a fair bit in the past, where you can just pick on a colour and saturate that one colour, which is good if you need to punch more oranges or reds into, say, rocky or like outback shots where you get those reds and oranges that the camera just can't quite pick up. So we're basically all the time trying to get a photograph as close as we can get it to when we saw it. And the cameras, mind you, this is an older camera. This is D700 I took this with. So it's a bit of an older camera, but it's still a good camera.
It's still done a good job.
Even
if it was a Nikon.
Yep. Thanks, Grant. And also we can adjust the luminance, which is also picks the colours out and what we want to darken or brighten within those colours. I'm going to first. That's another thing. I move my way down to that towards the end. I'm going to start with things that I have done in landscapes that work well for, and this is my style. Everyone has a style. The first thing I'm going to do is going to bring a grad filter over the top, and I'm going to reset that. At the moment it was throwing plus exposure. I'm going to bring that down, and this will add drama to the sky.
I'm liking this.
The other one I'm going to do is from the bottom. And once again, it's done the same process to the sky, but I won't go as hard. So I'll reset that back, and I'll just drop it just a little bit. And I'll also grab some clarity and just put in just at the bottom bit a little bit, just to make the water shine a little bit more. So I'm going to click done on that. And now I'm going to look at texture and clarity in the entire photo. Because at the moment, from what I see on the screen, is that it could do with a little more pop. So if I'm going to grab the texture slider first, and you can see, even if I push it to 100, so you can see what's happening, you can see what it's really working on. It's working on those trees. So I will push that up to around the 30s, I reckon. And just in that has brought a lot more detail into those trees. Clarity, because we've got texture now, I'm not really touching the clarity a lot, but you can also hit the clarity and you'll see which is really good for like adding grunginess to like rocks, bricks.
But you've got to be careful with it, don't you?
You do, because pushing it to 100,
it loses. It changes it, but it starts to look unnatural.
Correct. So now, because you got the texture slider, you don't have to hit the clarity. You don't have to hit the clarity at all. But I will probably in this scene, just to give the rocks and just a little bit more punch to it, I'll probably go a small amount. And we'll go to about, we'll probably only just go about to there. Dehaze, I don't think we need to touch. We've got a little bit of fog up there, but that all adds to it. So I don't think we need to. Some people like to clean it up or add it in. I don't think it probably needs it.
No. Again, that's one of those things. I mean, play with it by all means, folks. But just be careful. You can overdo these things and give them a surreal look rather than an unreal look, and it just looks off, in my opinion. So
One thing you can do, we were just touching on HSL, if you're not really sure what colour to attack, there's a little tool here, and I'm not sure exactly what they call it. Some people call it the nipple tool or something like that. So through here, if I just click on this little tool to the left, I can scroll my mouse over and it will highlight the colour that it's going to adjust.
Okay.
So at the moment, so I'm into the greens area. So it's at the moment, as I'm scrolling over the trees, it's flashing between green, blue, and aqua.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I hold left click down and hold it, I can lift it up and down, and it will adjust just that colour. So instead of wondering what colours you want to adjust, and you'll find that it won't just pick the one, it will adjust maybe one, two, or three sliders that it finds in that area.
Yep.
So at the moment on the luminance tool, but you can do this with saturation or hue. And even if I just picked on these orange colours here, you can see that it's pushing orange and yellow.
Yep.
So, which this is just the luminance tool. So if we just reset the luminance, double clicking on the word luminance resets it, and we can have a look at and click on our nipple tool again. We can select if this is saturation. You can actually punch just a little bit of more colour into there, and if you're wanting it a bit brighter, well then you use your luminance, and you might end up using a bit of both. So if we go back to here again, go back here, and you can just punch the sky up a little bit. Hue, you've got to be a bit careful with. I don't normally touch hue too much, but you can do the same sort of thing. You can change, and as you can see, you can change from your orange and yellows. You can push down into your reds. I'm not a big one unless there's some real issues with your photo. I rarely hit the hue. The main thing is I'm just trying to pick up on just the natural colours that are in it. But I do hit the saturation quite a bit, and occasionally luminance. So, say if you wanted these greens to be a little bit brighter, well then you can come onto the greens there, and what have I picked? I've picked blue. Let's just reverse that. Anytime you've got your history here too, if you want to do it that way. And if we grab I'm grabbing blue again, it likes the blue. Well, I'll just grab the green separately then. So you can see that it's just working on just the bushes inside there. Yep. Click done. So what I might do, hang on, I'll get out of there, and so what I just done, I just lifted the exposure just a little more, and I've just added a little bit of temperature because it was a fairly cold scene. And what that will enable me to do is darken these a bit further. So I'm all about drawing your eye into a scene. So through me lightening everything up a bit more, I can now darken this a little bit more, and just add just a little more drama into the photograph. You could paint some light in there. I'm not sure whether I'd paint too much light in there. We can have a quick look at it, just through this area.
I think you just killed it.
That's not the actual adjustment I'm doing. So quite often, to see where your brush is, you can have the exposure up high. But I always paint it in and then readjust. But what you can do is just put a bit of light in there with a bit more temperature, and that can give it just a smidge more. So what we can do is go back to yeah, it just gives it a bit more
no,
punch.
that's
So what you do is you just brush a little bit in.
Yep.
Like I said, in the history, you can always just look back at what you've done. And if you look, where's my brush? Brush points over here. So you can always look back on your settings from before. So if we go back to here, that's without the brush, and this is with. So it just gives a little more warmth to the heels.
I do like that, because what that's done is picked up some of the golds in the trees, and it's looking really good.
So that was adding a little bit of exposure with a little bit of temperature, and it just fills in just a little bit of warmer light in there. But any adjustments, don't go crazy. Do little tweaks here and there, and then slowly bring the photo up to. I mean, this is a few years ago. I got to remember back when I was standing there, and it's getting a bit harder now. But to recall what it was like when you were there, my feeling at the moment was that it was a bit warmer because the sun was going down, and maybe I just got a warm and fuzzy feeling.
That was before you went wading.
Yeah.
Brad, now I would get my crop tool, and I would be really interested to crop off a little bit of the bottom and a bit of the right.
Try and get those people out of there.
Definitely get the people out of there and get
what you could do.
I mean, that tree in the front centre is really annoying me. Whether you've brushed it out or whether you've cropped it out.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I would, all types of landscapes, I feel fits a pano more than just a square.
I agree.
So with my landscapes, I try to pano them out. Now with this, sometimes, see, if you just crop it off, you can get to an awkward crop. But what you can do sometimes is crop to say to there, and the only things I have to clone out is just his hands. So same with this bush here. I can bring that, I can crop it there and go, that doesn't look too bad. Yeah, but sometimes you are losing some of your nice detail and reflections. And
you've lost that reflection on the right-hand side.
Correct.
Bigger tree, which actually adds a bit to the...
Correct.
To the photo.
So sometimes you're better off to go, okay, I've still got this annoying little bit of shrub there, but it really is such a small part of the photo. And what I can just do in Photoshop very quickly, you can do it in Lightroom, but it has various effects when you're doing bigger clones. If it's a lens spot, I do it in Lightroom. So if we just go to, say, that crop, we're starting, if you look at the overall image, you're going, that's starting to look a lot nicer. But you got these couple of distractions here. So we could try quickly heal. We can try, and there's no feather on that. We want a 50% feather. We can try what Lightroom will do. And as it normally, you nearly can get away with it, not quite. No, I'd still do it in Photoshop. But anyway, it's not too bad. It very crudely. We can. We can disguise things to a certain degree. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. The untrained eye.
For the purpose of demonstration, it's
correct. The untrained eye, you can get away with it, because you got to remember, when people are viewing this, they're not looking for errors unless they're judging it.
That's right. And that's not jumping into the viewer's face. So now I'm taken into that image. I'm drawn into it now. Whereas before I was looking at the right hand side, the hands and the bush at the bottom. So now it draws me in. I see the path now, the walkway. And it leads me on up into the sunset. So it's pretty cool, mate. Well done.
So what we can still see some of the bush down the bottom.
That's all right.
But so let's have a look at. I should have made a virtual copy of that.
You should have made
I
a
should have,
virtual
but I can still do that.
Okay.
So if we create a virtual copy of that,
Mm-hmm.
and if we go back to number 1,
Mm-hmm.
we can go back to the import setting,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go to what I originally processed, and we can now look at them side by side. So that's the first one I did,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when it loads. There we go. Raw. And that's the
Wow.
second one. So I would still sharpen and denoise that
Mhm.
because it's got a bit of noise in it.
Yep.
So we can either use our fancy software. Actually, I'm interested in using the fancy software.
Yeah.
Topaz.
You got a plug-in on this? It would
I
have.
haven't checked. I've reinstalled everything.
Just check it.
Let's just check it.
I reckon.
I know there are plugins involved.
Yep.
So we should be able to go edit in, and there it is.
There it is.
And look at that! Look at this!
Yeah.
The software's getting longer, Grant. It's getting longer. We'll have just about every software known to man.
That's right.
So we'll go to
DxO doesn't.
Oh, it's supposed to though,
Yeah.
because
So-
I thought it said it was going to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all right.
But that's all right. We'll
Another
get it.
issue.
We'll get it
Yep.
sorted. We'll get it sorted. I've only just got it on here, so
So.
I had to pay for that one, Grant.
Oh.
So I'm really trusting that it's good. Those other ones they've given to our club to try out, which we're very soon to do with our club.
Mm-hmm.
And the Topaz one, I'm going to. I'm still testing it out, but I'll probably buy it myself. So
Well done.
I'm very impressed
Yes,
so far.
I
So
love
let's
it.
see what it does
Yep.
to my photo.
Yep.
So we'll go to denoise. So we will edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustments because we don't want to lose those Lightroom adjustments. It's all very exciting, Grant.
No, that would look nice on a wall somewhere, Brad.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to go back to old stuff because I don't normally go back through old
Well,
stuff.
that's such a contrast to what you did initially in your processing. But you'll have to log in with you.
That's right. See, I haven't opened
haven't
it.
opened it
I haven't
since
opened
you
it up.
installed
So I'll
Delete this.
I'll
bit out.
cut this
Yep,
bit
yep,
out.
yep.
Green. That's better. Okay, so just got that organised. So now we are in denoise, and if I remember rightly, we go to view, I think it was, and split view.
Yep.
And denoise AI is the mode that it's on at the moment. So, okay, all right, I'm already seeing a big difference there.
Oh, you what?
Hopefully you viewers at home can see it.
And-
If you don't get a big screen and watch Photo Australia on the big screen.
That's right.
So, yeah, that's quite good actually.
And
that's taken all the noise out.
And the lack of artifacts in it. I mean, the real problem with when you denoise is you introduce halos and all sorts of artifacts and come into play and losing detail and
Interesting.
yeah. So you
See,
now-
I've got a
that's when you
hand
should be
now.
able to-
Okay. Yeah. Back
froze
with
up for some
back with
reason.
it, folks. So just froze up for a second there, but we are back in action. So now I was going to go have a look at the bush here. That's incredible. Because that's full of noise there. Yeah, have a look at that. Nice and clean. Yeah, I'm very impressed with this software, I must admit. I'll be stubborn on that.
That's quicker. That's quicker already than what it was before.
There you go. They might have had a performance update. Yeah, that's pretty quick. Yep, that's good. All right. So we can increase or decrease how much that does, But isn't it surprising how that's probably fine out the box? So AI clear. I'm going to stick with the denoise, I reckon. Because that looks like... Yeah, it's got... AI clear's just got probably a little more artifacts, I reckon, than denoise. And I mean, the noise is the problem in this photo, not... clear. I think the clear adds a level of sharpening. Would you agree with that?
I think so. Because, well, it does. You go back to clear, look at your options here. Like it's removing a little less noise, perhaps.
Oh, enhanced sharpness is low.
Low, so...
There you go.
Probably you've got a little more control on that one. And I'm just seeing... What I've noticed with some of these things, they... Like if any bright spots in it, like that rock up the top in that little bit up the top there, you can see a few little things popping out that not quite to my liking. But then it might look all right on the full image.
And that's the thing as well. We're looking at... I quite like that.
Yep.
I mean, it could probably do with just a tiny bit... Oh, well, I can add some sharpening here anyway. Yeah. I'm moving back to the original. I've added a little more sharpening, only a tiny bit more. But I'm liking that. I think, what else have they got here? They've got auto.
You've got a low light mode down there, which is off at the moment. So what happens if you click that on?
Yeah, I prefer... It looks like it's taken a bit away. Yeah, I prefer it off. Because we've already sort of done a lot of processing in Lightroom already for a lot of that. They've got a colour noise reduction. That's interesting. That would be a good one to test out on the Astro type stuff where you get a bit of colour noise. Recover original detail. I'm sort of quite like what's already there, that it's already done.
Yeah, they've got a really interesting tool right down the bottom there, Brad.
Yeah, it's not... Recovering a bit of the detail's not too bad. What's the interesting tool, Grant?
Mask.
Down there. Yep.
Now that lets you, if you had something, you can go and just apply it to a certain area of that image using that masking tool.
Okay.
And you can adjust the size of it.
You paint it like a brush a bit.
Yep.
So that means that...
any of those tools will now only work in that area.
Okay. Interesting.
So if you wanted to play with...
and then you can subtract it as well. Yeah, that subtracts it down. Yeah, that's interesting.
So that would be something that you would play with to find a specific use. But I'm thinking of some of those images where you've got a really noisy sky, for example.
Yep.
Without actually seeing one, I'm not going to be able to point to an exact use. But there'll be times when you'll go, oh, wow, that could be really, really handy.
So there we go. That's it back in Lightroom. So and we've got...
The original.
Let's go full screen with this.
Yep. So that was...
That's what I processed in 2011. End of 2011. And if we go to the next one, that's what I've processed now, 2020.
Yep. And just going back to the 2011 image, that I suggest would have been processed by someone in 2011 who was pretty nervous about the whole concept of post-processing, unsure of exactly what to push and how hard to push things. Would that be a fair comment?
Very similar to the 2020 version of the person who processed that.
No, he's a lot braver these days.
Yeah, I was.
I mean, you were learning then.
Yeah, I mean, I still am, but I was fresh, and yeah, like I said, I only bought my first camera, D700 Nikon, which was a low light camera, which probably helps me with pulling a lot of the detail back out of there. But it shows you don't need real. Even though I have got some expensive cameras, but you don't really need expensive cameras. It'd be a lot better if I knew now what I did back then of actually getting a bit better composition. I would be shoes off, socks off, skinny dipping, butt out the water.
Oh my God!
But all honestly,
that's not a good. I'll have nightmares tonight. Mate.
Then you really got some blowouts in your photo. But
that's a scary thought.
It is. But I would certainly photograph that completely differently now, and probably even a different angle altogether. But it's just interesting to look at some of the old photos, and we're looking at purely processing of how we've come from way I processed back in the earlier days to what you can do now, and what the software can do now.
That's right.
I mean, that's probably even the biggest thing, is not so much of how good you are or whatever. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there go, oh, geez, I don't like how Brad processed that or whatever, but is the software capabilities of being able to pull out detail.
Yep, that's right.
And I'm just glad that back then I was shooting RAW.
That's right.
Because if I was shooting JPEG, I certainly wouldn't be able to do what I did today. So,
that's right. Yeah. No, excellent. Well, there we go, folks.
Well, that one, we'll wrap that episode up. Still very impressed with the Topaz software. So if anyone from Topaz, not that they'll probably see these videos, but anyone out there, thanks for letting our camera club use that under certain circumstances. And like I said, I think you'll find that I'll be becoming a purchaser of it. So, yeah, shout out to them.
Yep, as I already have. I had one of their programs for a while, but since looking at this, I have purchased both packages. So, yep.
Yeah, no, I think I might be doing the same. And I usually get pretty heavily involved with the Lightroom stuff and being able to do it. But I must admit, I'm pretty and I can get to a certain degree of where I can fix a lot of things that what Topaz is doing in Lightroom.
Yep.
But to be able to do it so easily, and whether I would quite get to the exact effect of that AI, I sort of doubting myself. Maybe a more experienced person, maybe in Photoshop you could do that, being more experienced. I'm sort of entry-level Photoshop, I guess. I do use it, but time is a factor for me, and being able to just bring up a software that quickly. And we're not sponsored by them at all. We're not sponsored by anyone. But
note that, folks. That could be rectified.
That could be rectified, but I think we might need some more people to tune in. But it's to be able to just click a button so quickly and easy that I see it being part of my workflow.
That's exactly the word I was just about to use. That it becomes a tool in your toolbox of workflow, and I'm using it more and more. I use mainly DxO than Lightroom, but very similar. And part of my workflow now is includes a couple of tools out of the Topaz toolkit.
See, I might even dramatise that a little bit more, but I'm pretty happy with the way that came out.
I think that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Very
All
good
right.
indeed.
With that, I think we tried finishing the video before,
did.
and I get
Yeah, you
on
kept-
tangents.
you kept
I
yakking
keep
on.
yakking on. All right. With that, it's great to see you all, and we will see you in the next episode.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.